Chapter 18, Racetracks and Runways, Part 2, Landings and Arrivals. I packed my racing suit and helmet into its travel bag and headed for the airport and home. I knew I had done all I could. Looking back, I drove from last to first on a perfectly timed start, and then, once out front, pulled away with a half-a-track lead. Very impressive drive. Now back in Hollywood, I was ready to get back to work on the day-to-day operations of building my mini drug empire, when Nathan called and said we needed to talk. He had someone that would load his plane in Colombia with 300 to 400 kilos of coke and wanted me to help with the offload. Now, normally I would be hesitant to do something like this because it's high risk with lots of moving parts, and I wasn't in charge. So I had no control over my fate. After all, I had my own gig running weed to a highway in Buffalo that paid very well, and yes, making over $20,000 for one night's work was very good pay. But at what risk? I had turned down gigs like this many times in the past. After all, there is no such thing as a simple cocaine smuggling operation from Colombia. If caught, it would be a certain prison sentence, and 15 years was the norm. Nathan sweetened the deal by allowing me to put up some cash and buy kilos at cost. And once landed, I could broker the rest of his share of the load to my buyers. When I started using and selling coke in 1974, a kilo of cocaine was priced at $57,000. It was a drug strictly for the elite, exclusively for those that could afford it. Even those who could afford it couldn't afford it in excess. Now, a kilo of cocaine was between $11,000 and $15,000, depending on how close you were to the source, and of course, like all heavily traded commodities, timing and market conditions. And anybody and everybody was now doing coke. And just when you thought everybody had access to it in excess, someone introduced crack. Crack is a cheap process of reversing coke back into its raw form of paste or basa, and now it was an epidemic. And the cocaine epidemic was destroying lives all over America, including me and many of the friends I grew up with. Where pot was and is a harmless weed, coke was and is a horrible and addictive drug that, yes, some are fine with it, but many would destroy themselves. This trip would be Nathan, Lee, Big Jeff, and Tom. So it was a great seasoned team of my closest friends, a band of brothers. After all, we had all started out as teenagers, little drug warriors, now willingly dragged into this epic cocaine battle. I remember my mother saying, if, insert friend's name here, jumped off a bridge, would you? I also remember thinking, probably. But strangely, in the end, it wasn't only the camaraderie or the money. I did it for the craziest reason. I was doing it for the thrill, the excitement, the adrenaline rush. I guess I was as much an adrenaline junkie as anything else. Once committed to Nathan, there was no backing out. In our world, it's just a bad thing to do, and it's just not my style. It was dark, actually pitch black. We had been lying in the wet, cold swamp for over 5 hours, having gone in around 9 p.m. Big Jeff was laying 100 yards down the road from me, a fully auto M16 in his hands, his pockets filled with military-issued hand grenades. Jeff's job was acting as security, guarding our makeshift runway. I was at the far end of the runway. Tommy was at the opposite end, where the bird would touch down first. In any operation like this, there can only be one leader. This night, it was Lee. So regardless of who we were in the drug world pecking order, on this set, we all put our egos aside, and Lee was in charge. Whatever he said, we did. Lee was manning our makeshift command center in the woods, climbing a tree in the darkness to string an antenna as high as possible, to ensure our radios could speak with Nathan and the bird. We were in radio silent mode and would stay that way most of the night. We had spent the last weeks preparing for this. Like any mission, planning is everything. Every detail, every movement of the team members was thought out and rehearsed. All the equipment checked and double-checked. Spares were added for redundancy. Batteries and backup batteries all charged. All the extraction vehicles fully gassed, along with a spare 100 gallons of aviation fuel in drums in the back of Tommy's pickup truck. Just enough to refuel the bird for a safe trip back to a real airport. But only once she landed, and we unloaded her payload. And now we waited in the cool, wet swamp, clad in full camo, armed with everything from hunting knives to hand grenades. And to keep up with it all, the whole crew had been taking speed for days. We were all strung the fuck out and capable of anything. And I mean anything. The guns, the speed, none of this was me. And that's why I never do this shit. But here I was, looking back. Thank God nobody got killed that night. I stood up to pee and turned to look out at the bay. Judging by the shrimp boats offshore, I knew we were somewhere between Fort Myers and Tampa. The lights from their rigging shone back at me in the pitch-black night, like low-hanging stars, silhouetting their shape into a fleet of eerie ghost ships. I had just laid back in my spot, wedged up against a tree to protect my backside from whatever else lay in the woods, when out of the dark came a blood-curdling scream. The sounds of an animal dying pierced the night. Big Jeff broke radio silence to say he thought an alligator just ate a bird and wanted to move from position. He got a flat no. Back on the radio, Lee responded, "No one moves from position." Big Jeff and I had come onto the set last by design. It was our job to do one last recon of the roads, ensuring there weren't any other smugglers or locals or cops in the area before we settled in with the rest of the crew for the night. What they didn't know was Jeff was spooked. We had driven by a cop when first leaving the motel. He was backed into the side of an old two-lane road with his dome light on, reading a map. Even though this was 20 miles away from the set, Jeff started flipping out. He wanted to turn around. He didn't want to go in. No doubt the speed-induced sleep deprivation only added to his paranoia. Well, this and the fact that we were driving into a dark and desolate road to do a 300-kilo cocaine smuggling trip. I told him we were so far away that this cop couldn't be part of a stakeout. He responded that they could be following us around these dark country roads, and we wouldn't even know. After all, they have radios. We were driving one of my load cars, a little blue Ford Tempo. I would be driving it out of the set with most of the 300 kilos of coke in the trunk. So if we didn't bring this car into the set, there would be no way to extract the load. That was my job, and failure wasn't an option. As I drove the weaving two-lane country roads to our future runway, I rolled my eyes towards Jeff in the passenger seat. To see his oversized frame stuffed into the front seat of this little Ford, his skin was pale white. His big round face panicked. After all, again, who knows how much speed he had taken, and we were driving into what could be a life-altering situation. He was now pleading with me. I finally said, "Look, I'm going in, and so is this car. If you still feel this way when we get there, I will let you off somewhere safe. Or we will walk out together, but the car is going in." Needless to say, I was lying, and with no intention of leaving, we stayed. I remember settling back down, pretty sure Jeff was right and that something definitely ate something, and none of us wanted to be next on the menu, when I heard 3 clicks over the radio. And then in sequence, we all clicked back 3 times. Then there were 4 clicks, and then in sequence, we each clicked back 4 clicks, and then nothing. Then all hell broke loose. I could hear the twin engines of the bird in the distance as Lee came over the radio yelling, "Hang fire! Hang fire!" I jumped into action, running full speed with my backpack in one hand as I unzipped it with the other. I had 30 green Calium Chem light glow sticks tied together with fishing line, 18 inches apart, 10 to a string. As I ran as fast as I could to the center of the road, Tommy was doing the same from his end of our now makeshift runway. We each broke the sticks and laid the lines down in the center of the road, about 25 yards apart. As Tommy and I met in the middle, we would then work our way back to the opposite ends of the road, dropping fireflies. These are small, very, very bright flashing strobe lights, about the size of your thumb. Once snapped onto the top of a 9-volt battery, they were ultra bright. We were also putting down watertight strobes used in the marine industry for life rafts and man-overboard gear that we placed along the sides of the road to make up our new runway's edge. I remember running at full speed back towards the little blue tempo and hearing the bird's twin engines closing in on me from behind. I looked over my shoulder and saw a fucking perfect airport runway with a twin-engine plane barreling down on me. At the same time, Nathan turned to his co-pilot, saying, "Look, it's fucking MIA, and I know customs." I jumped into the little blue tempo, started her up, and sped back through the dark, a few hundred yards towards the plane. I couldn't see. It was pitch black, and no lights on the plane or the car, and my vision blurred from looking into the ultra-bright fireflies. I knew one thing: while time was of the essence, as they say, driving into the plane would be a bad thing. I let off the gas where I figured the plane had stopped, and in my own speed-induced haze in the thick mist of the Everglades swamp, with my heart beating like a wired receiver, having just run several football fields up and back our makeshift runway, I slowed, pulling right up next to the plane. Nathan still had the Rolling Stones song "Hang Fire" playing from the sound system on the plane when I pulled up. While we loaded the duffel bags of cocaine in the trunk of my car, Tommy and Big Jeff were loading the empty large plastic fuel drums from the plane into Tom's pickup, while the co-pilot refueled the plane's wing tanks with a hand pump we had brought up with us. There was no way the plane could return to its FBO with the plastic fuel drums inside. It would look bad enough that there were no seats. Nathan and Lee jumped into the chase car, well, the crash car, and led the way as I followed them out of the area and onto the highway. We were southbound and heading for Fort Lauderdale. We were clear of the offload site and about 15 minutes down the road when I looked up in surprise, seeing a checkpoint ahead. Nathan and Lee just blew through it, and so did I. The old guard manning the guardhouse waved as we passed. I took a deep breath and then settled in for the drive home. Again, just watching the red glow of the taillights ahead. The plan was that the plane wouldn't take off until the load cars were safely out of the area, so as not to draw attention, and you can rest assured a twin-engine plane taking off in the dead of night from a backcountry road in the middle of the woods can be heard for miles. So first we would leave, as we had the coke or contraband or evidence depending if we made it or got caught. Next, the plane would take off. Then, Big Jeff and Tommy would stay long enough to grab the runway. Glow sticks, fireflies, strobe lights with the control center radios. We would all meet back in Fort Lauderdale, having made more money before daybreak than some make all year. 6 weeks later, we would all repeat each step, except for Nathan's theme song, "Hang Fire," would never come over the radio. Instead, it would be Lee's anguished screams that Nathan was dead. The plane, loaded with 800 pounds of cocaine and more than twice that weight in extra fuel, never made full liftoff. They just ran out of runway at full speed and argued in to the tree line at the end of the little Colombian dirt airstrip. An aviation fuel fireball incinerating both the pilot and co-pilot instantly. While writing this, I can't help but think, did it all happen in slow motion, frame by frame, like a racing car, or jumping off that 13-story building? I would go on to race faster cars at bigger events in front of tens of thousands of fans, all while quietly running more drugs and doing more smuggling gigs. Thankfully, with less tragic outcomes. You see, racers and drug runners are alike. Both are always on the edge, a constant tug of war, balancing high risk versus reward. Sadly, Nathan, who was bright and intelligent and sharp as a tack, with a knowing smile and a genuine gleam in his eye, could have done anything, from lawyer to stockbroker. He got sucked into this life of running drugs as a kid and lost the war, sadly dying a very young man. He played the cards, and this time, his ace of spades won. Strangely, his smuggling theme song, Hang Fire, is a term used to describe pulling the trigger on a flintlock rifle that fails to fire, a failed action. I think of Nate in those times. Why pick an 80s bubblegum theme song about failure? I can understand a Stones song. So why not something like Sympathy for the Devil? Or better yet, Gimme Shelter? My choice would have been Stephen Still's acoustic ode to smuggling, Treetop Flyer. Yes, Treetop Flyer. Every word a lesson on how it's supposed to be done. Writing this hurts. Nathan was my friend.